Before America had Vanderbilts, Rockefellers, or Morgans, there was a man many considered richer, stranger, and more mysterious than all of them. His name was Stephen Girard, a one-eyed French immigrant who arrived in America nearly penniless, spoke broken English, survived plague and revolution, financed a nation on the verge of collapse, and died as possibly the richest private citizen in American history. And yet, despite his wealth, he lived almost like a ghost. Stephen Girard was born on May the 20th, 1750, in the ancient port city of Bordeaux. His birth itself seemed marked by hardship and symbolism. He was born to a sea captain father and a mother who died when he was still an infant. Some accounts suggest she died only months after his birth, leaving the boy emotionally isolated almost from the beginning of life. His father, often away at sea, reportedly treated him harshly and viewed him as frail and difficult. And Stephen Girard was different. As a child, he suffered from severe eye injuries that left him partially blind and physically disfigured. One eye was nearly useless, and the other became clouded and swollen. Historians disagree on the exact causes, but accounts point to two major injuries. One eye was damaged during childhood from disease or infection. The other was reportedly injured during a violent accident involving tools or maritime work. The result was unforgettable. Girard's eyes became uneven and unsettling in appearance. Witnesses later described him as looking almost haunted, one eye cloudy and fixed, the other intense and piercing. People stared at him. Children mocked him. And throughout his life, Girard developed the cold, silent personality of a man who learned very early that the world could be cruel. By age 14, Girard was already sailing the Atlantic. The sea became his real home. He worked as a cabin boy, sailor, navigator, and eventually captain. He learned trade routes, shipping logistics, insurance systems, commodity pricing, and the movement of wealth between empires. He had almost no formal education, but he possessed something more dangerous, an almost supernatural ability to calculate risk. Girard could reportedly perform massive financial calculations entirely in his head. He remembered cargo inventories, interest rates, and market prices with astonishing precision. Associates often found him eerily silent during negotiations, only to later discover he had mentally calculated profits down to the last cent. In the 1770s, Girard settled in Philadelphia, then one of the most important cities in the American colonies. He arrived as an outsider, French, socially awkward, partially blind, heavily accented, and viewed with suspicion. But Girard saw something others did not. America was chaos, and chaos creates fortunes. During the American Revolutionary War, Girard became a merchant trader and shipping operator. While others feared war zones, Girard thrived in dangerous markets. He bought ships others considered worthless. He insured risky cargo. He traded in volatile wartime conditions. And slowly, obsessively, he accumulated wealth. Then came 1793. The deadly 1793 Philadelphia yellow fever epidemic swept through Philadelphia, killing thousands. The wealthy fled the city. Government officials escaped. Entire neighborhoods became silent graveyards. But Stephen Girard stayed. In one of the strangest chapters of his life, Girard personally helped care for plague victims. He converted buildings into makeshift hospitals and reportedly carried dying patients himself. Some called him heroic. Others thought he was simply fearless because he cared little for his own life. Even then, Girard remained deeply mysterious. He rarely smiled. He distrusted nearly everyone. He worked constantly, often late into the night, alone among ledgers and candles. Yet his reputation after the epidemic transformed him from strange foreign merchant into a figure of immense influence. By the early 1800s, Girard had become one of the most powerful financiers in America. He owned a fleets of ships, warehouses, international trade networks, real estate, and eventually his own bank. He was ruthless in business. He studied every detail personally. He trusted almost nobody. Workers often feared him, yet his instincts were legendary. When Napoleon's wars disrupted European trade, Girard maneuvered around blockades and shortages with astonishing precision. He bought assets during panic and sold during recovery, decades before modern market theory existed. And then America faced disaster. During the War of 1812, the United States government was in financial collapse. British forces blockaded ports. Tax revenues dried up. The national government struggled to borrow money. Many wealthy investors feared America might actually lose the war. Then came one of the most extraordinary financial interventions in American history. Stephen Girard stepped forward. Girard believed something very few people understood. If the United States failed financially, the entire American economy would collapse with it, including trade, banking, shipping, and property values. But there was something deeper too. Though born French, Girard had come to see America as the land where he built himself from nothing. The man who trusted almost nobody trusted the future of the United States. So in 1813, when the US government desperately needed money, Girard personally purchased massive quantities of federal war bonds. Alongside a small group of investors, he helped finance approximately 95% of a critical federal loan needed to continue the war. At times, Girard himself reportedly supplied the majority of the money. Without that financing, the government might have failed to pay troops or continue military operations. In simple terms, Stephen Girard may have personally prevented the financial collapse of the United States during the War of 1812. When Girard died in 1831, his fortune stunned the nation. His estate totaled roughly $7.5 million, using dollars valued with 1831 dollars. That number sounds modest today, until economists adjust it properly. Using simple inflation alone, Girard's fortune would equal roughly $250 to $300 million today. But that comparison is misleading. The real measure of extreme wealth is economic power relative to the size of the nation and its GDP. And by that standard, Girard enters truly elite territory. At the time of his death, Girard's wealth represented approximately 0.4% of total United States GDP. Equivalent modern comparisons place him somewhere between $80 to over $200 billion in relative economic power, depending on methodology. That places him in the same realm as John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos. But some historians argue Girard's influence was even more extraordinary, because America itself was still young, capital markets were primitive, and private fortunes rarely reached such concentration. At one point, Stephen Girard may have personally controlled more economic influence relative to the United States GDP than nearly any modern billionaire. And yet, he lived strangely modestly. No royal palace, no extravagant court, No dynasty, no glamorous social life. He often wore plain clothing, walked alone, and obsessed over business records. Visitors described him as intensely private, emotionally distant, and almost spectral in demeanor. Some viewed him as miserly. Others saw trauma beneath the fortune. When he died in Philadelphia in 1831, he left most of his immense wealth to charity, education, and public causes, including what became Girard College. Ironically, the strange orphaned boy, mocked for his injured and deformed eyes, ended up funding schools for children abandoned by society. Stephen Girard remains one of the most fascinating figures in American history because he does not fit neatly into any category. He was a humanitarian during plague, a ruthless businessman, an immigrant patriot, a near recluse, a self-made titan, and perhaps the financial savior of the United States during its darkest hour. He transformed himself from a scarred, nearly blind child of the docks into a man whose wealth rivaled kingdoms. And unlike many billionaires of today, he did it before modern corporations existed, before railroads dominated commerce, before Wall Street became an empire, before America itself fully understood what capitalism could become. Stephen Girard built one of the greatest fortunes in history, largely with ships, nerve, mathematics, and an almost eerie understanding of human fear. Perhaps Stephen Girard immensely understood capitalism and was motivated by profit. In the end, it would seem he undertook all of his actions with genuine altruism.